Alright, so it's been a long time since I've made a video, and basically what I wanted to do here is do a new tutorial on cross server, obviously because there's been a lot of changes. Originally I had a channel with my original guild, The Original, and then my character name was Deadpool. I'm now Lifepool, same server. I basically just got rid of the old account, I gave it to a friend, and then restarted a new account as a paladin. And there's for my guild, we used to be really full. Just yesterday, my guild was basically stolen from me, and all my players and things of that nature. And a lot of players were kicked out by other members, and those members joined other guilds. And that's happened twice with my guild, where I've recruited a ton of players, had it to the max, and then my players basically stab me in the back and steal all my players. But anywho, you can see Genesis and The Original were ranked number 2 and 3 on the server at the moment, and probably will continue that way. What I wanted to do though is just kind of go over a couple things with cross server. And we're going to start by basically going over the basics of what cross server is again, and how to play it really well. And it really, like, if you guys ever see me in cross server, obviously say hi. That'd be really helpful. But what really sucks is when I'm playing with players and I try to explain to them what to do. And in a lot of cases, you're not, especially now, you're not going to always have a team where you may have the strongest team, but there are ways to beat teams where they have like a mega strong player, or even if they have a few mega strong players. And especially if I'm on it, I'm trying to direct the team on how to do it. You don't always need a super strong player on your team to win, right? Or you don't have to always be the strongest team to win. It's all strategy at the end of the day. So let's go over the basics on how to beat a team, right? So one way is most of the time those heavy players will run into the middle, right? And they will then try to kill everybody off in the middle. This way, their team can continue to obviously mine the middle, right? You have less players in the middle, then obviously that will allow you to win, allow his team or her team to win the middle more than the opposing team, in theory, right? So you can also do this same strategy that he's or she's doing, that mega strong player, by abusing that, right? So one way is obviously if you see a strong player in the middle and you see that you have a lot of players in the middle, okay, yes, you're going to die and it's going to take 30 seconds for you to resolve, but what that does is it will put the mega player in cooldown, right? And cooldown lasts, I think it's 5, is it 10 seconds? I think it's a total of 10 or 12 seconds or something like that, right? Where they can't attack another player, which obviously is helpful, right? And that 10 to 12 seconds can be really critical, because then obviously if there's enough players clicking on that middle mine in the middle, then what that does is it allows somebody to mine it, right? So when I generally run into the middle, what I'll do is I won't even attack anybody, right? I'll literally put myself in a great position, and after the cooldown happens on this timer, I'll jump in a match and show you and explain it as I'm going on. But basically, what I'm getting at is you want to spam click the mine, right? You don't want to attack anybody. Let them attack you. Now, let's say, for instance, one of your team members, you see them having the little sign above their head. It's like a plus with a little bullseye in it, right? And then they're mining. Obviously, at that point, if you see somebody in your team, you don't want to keep clicking it because somebody's already mining it, right? So obviously, you're not going to win it from your team. So what you do is you want to then protect him and attack everybody surrounding him. And a lot of players don't seem to understand that, right? There's one scenario where if they have a mega strong player, let's go over that again, that you want to keep that mega strong player in cooldown. Abusing the cooldown feature, even if you do die and you know you're going to die, especially the really weak players, This is a great way for you to become an advanced player by doing this strategy, right? You're level 54 and you're playing with a bunch of level 60 plus, players, right? Or you're level 60 something and you're playing with a bunch of level 70s, all right? So you want to figure out who the strongest player is on the opposing team, and all you want to do is attack him as much as possible. You want to hunt him down and attack him. Slowing him down gives your team extra seconds, and then it leans the favor in their and it leans the advantage in your team's favor, because you're dying, cool, but then that gives your team the ability to not have their strong players to die, right? So your strong players, even though they may not be stronger than that one mega strong player, have a chance to clear out the opposing team, giving your team an advantage on having more players on the field at that moment, that like, in that 10 to 15 second window, which is huge, because obviously if you continually to do that and your team continues to have 10 to 15 seconds where they're not being attacked or cleared out by that really strong player, then obviously you guys are going to be able to mine more, just based off of numbers, right? Just based off of statistics. If I have more players on the field than my opposing player, obviously I'm going to be able to mine, right? Now, let's say, and then obviously that's not always the case, but at the same time, let's say you're keeping their strong player in cooldown. Obviously, he can't harm your team, which gives your team the ability to obviously mine more, right? And a lot of weak players don't understand that, and they just kind of like, oh, they're always complaining like, oh, every time I attack somebody, I die, blah blah blah. That's fine and dandy, but you have to know where you can be good at, and I'm explaining it to you right now, right? This is how you can really help out team members like me if I'm on your team, and I may not be the strongest on the server sometimes, but I'm strong enough where I can kill just about everybody. Besides, like, I think there's like 10 to 12 people I can't beat in cross server on a one-on-one basis, or I can't deliver a tremendous amount of damage to them, etc. But I can do enough damage where if I attack them first and somebody follows up, even if they're a weaker player, you should be able to clear them out, if you're just a mediocre strength player. But anyways, but yeah, so that's obviously something you want to, as a PvP player, keep in mind, is how to support your team at that point in time if you're not really strong. And that's the best way to support your team. If you see your team losing dramatically, right, more than likely it's because the opposing team has a super strong player, and that they're clearing your team out, right? So obviously if we don't have enough players on the field, then obviously we can't mine, right? And then obviously not being able to mine puts us behind. Now, another good example too, besides just keeping your players on cooldown, until that happens, there's another way to tilt the favor for your team when they have a super strong player. Like in the beginning, right? You run to the middle, and all of a sudden you notice there's a Sunny or Freyja or a Evil Star or something of that nature. And generally speaking, when they're on the field and you're facing them, if you play incorrectly, they're going to be able to win, right? Because you're going to keep playing normally, where you want to just go grab that middle as best as possible and mine that sucker, okay? Really, besides just keeping that big player in cooldown, another great way to do this is, obviously you have 10 players, right? And there's 3 outside mines. Those 3 outside mines are worth 15 points each. And this strategy really does work, but you have to be willing to commit to it over and over and over again, right? So obviously on the outside there's 3 times 15 points, which is 45 points, correct? And then in the middle it's only worth 30 points, okay? Now occasionally we might win the middle, okay, here and there. But if we can win all 3 of the outside mines continuously, we're obviously going to be able to keep a tight game on them and potentially even get ahead of them. So how do you do this when you're facing a team that's might be stronger than you? Well, the other team is going to keep swarming into the middle, okay, over and over again. They're just going to stack up all their players. All right, so you have 10 players, You want one player to just continually, over and over and over again, go in the middle just to keep them busy, all right, in the middle. If he wins one, he wins one. If he doesn't, he doesn't. The other 9 players are supposed to spread out in groups of 3 on the outside mines, right? And the reason why I say groups of 3 is because what happens is when there's 3 players on the outside mine trying to mine one mine, one guy or 2 guys can't kill all 3 of you quick enough where you won't be able to mine that mine on the outside. Which obviously that allows you to mine the mine, right? Even though your players may die or some players might not die. Because generally speaking, the really super strong player, they won't keep up with this strategy right away, which will give you the advantage. But even if they do, the cool thing about it is they still can't kill all 3 players. It's impossible, right, to kill all 3 players at once, okay? So you are going to have that advantage, and you have to really pay attention to your team's dots. And a lot of players don't understand how to read the board, but for me, I'm always paying attention to how many players I have on what sections and how many dots I have where, right? Because obviously, if you see, you know, on one mine that there's no players there, and you guys are winning or you're losing, obviously you want to get your butt, and especially if you're a stronger player, you want to get your butt to that other mine to support it, correct? So that's where you hit the sprint button. Number 2, generally, if you didn't do the upgrade on the skins, and you want to sprint over there as quickly as possible and try to win that mine back until your guys come back in and respawn. Okay, so that's one thing. And again, you want to stay in those groups. You want to always be in a group, especially if you're in a losing situation. That way, somebody can eventually mine that mine, and you know that you're stacking up points for your team. Not stacking up points is obviously detrimental, right? So even if you have to waste resources, which is human capital, to win a mine, you do so, because at the end of the day, the idea is to win. It's not to be individually good at the, you know, being, you know, stacking up points for yourself, because if your team doesn't win, those points really don't matter, right? It's all about winning, period. And that's obviously the, you know, the name of the game. You want to win so that your team can get a bit more points, obviously, at the end of the day, because you get that 500 plus bonus on your honor, which obviously helps out in the end once you start you know, gathering points. Okay, now what else is there? Okay, obviously as a strong player, it's really easy for you, but even if you are a strong player, I'm still able to, even though I'm not the super strongest, but I'm never the weakest on the board, but I do have the ability to rank really high, and that's just because I understand timing, and that's another big thing with cross servers, understanding timing and understanding all sorts of tricks. And a lot of the tricks are obviously knowing how to use cooldown to your advantage and against the player, right? Using cooldown is probably the biggest secret in the game. If you understand that, you're going to be really, really good, all right? And what do I mean by abusing or using cooldown? Okay, so obviously in some situations, you want to attack somebody so they can't attack you, okay? So where that comes into a big play is when you're playing the crate version of cross server, where you're obviously you're running crates back to your mine and then running back out like capture the flag type theory, right? Okay, the best way to do that is, let's say here's what happens to me a lot of times is that I kill a bunch of players. Okay, I have like no health left, and I get the mine and I have the crate. Okay, now obviously they run at you right away. They're going to come at you really, really quick. What you want to do while you're running back, if you can, and you see a weak player in that group, attack that weak player as soon as possible. That way it will put you in cooldown, which protects you from other players, right? And then obviously if that protects you from other players, then again that then gives you time to make that run back to your base to obviously drop off the crate, right? And vice versa. And then another big tip is obviously when your team is running back, you want to attack your opponent to then what's the correct scenario? You want to attack your opponent so that they can't you know, they can't, you know, obviously attack you or whatever.